This is the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Now Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but it is thrown out and trampled underfoot." He then said, "You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but rather on the lampstand. And it gives off light to all of those in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Now don't think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but rather to fulfill the law. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until it is in fact accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." This is the gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. Please pass the salt. As most of you know, I take medication for depression. And I had to go to the doctor Tuesday to get the dose increased. So, consequently, what happens when you're kind of where I am now and have been for a few days, in about a week it'll regulate. I know that, but I'm not there yet, see? So when you're where I'm at now, it's impossible to read and comprehend, and it's not all that easy to think. And I did figure out Pass the Salt on Wednesday. That was going to be the title of the sermon. And I kept doubling back and trying to, do something, and nothing was working. And then finally, Friday night, I took Ryan to a Valentine party at his church, Emmanuel Lutheran in Livonia. And I had my lectionary book, and I know Pastor Scott real well. I came in. I decided to stay there. It didn't make sense to drive home and come back, so I decided to stay there. I said to Scotty, hey, I'm going to try to work on my sermon during the party. And he said, that's fine, go wherever you want. So anyway, I sat down in the narthex, and the party was off a bit, but I could hear the party, And I tried to read the scriptures and stuff, I was trying to think about how do you take the shalom that's mentioned in Isaiah, and it moves right through Jesus being the light of the world and stuff like that, and how do I tie all this together, this movement of peace and love and justice and mercy, and how do you weave it all together? So anyway, I still couldn't think, see, that was the problem. I still couldn't think. So finally, I just closed my eyes and I listened. And I listened and I heard from this party, it was a multi-generational party, I heard voices of different ages, and I heard laughter, and I heard piano music. They were playing the theme song from Lion King, and then there was a little bit of prayer, and then they were putting together I heard they were putting together Valentine bags, gift bags for some people. I don't know who it was, but anyway, I'm hearing all this stuff and more, and I'm hearing God's love working through this community. And I was just thinking about that, and thinking about just that, again, that passing the salt, that they became kind of this family, this community that was loving one another and thinking about those beyond the boundaries of the church. And I thought, really, it was that spirit that I was hearing and experiencing as I'm sitting in the narthex on Friday night. It was that same spirit that Isaiah was trying to channel into the people who had come back from exile in Babylon 500 years before Jesus. He was encouraging them to look beyond the bounds of this rigid, legalistic faith of simply praying and worshiping and fasting, to recognize that what God was calling them to do was to live this life of love beyond the bounds of the temple, to restore people, to lift people up, to give them what they need, to become the peace that surpasses all understanding. And it was that message that Isaiah is trying to drive home to a people who are struggling to hear. And it's that same spirit, that same love, that same shalom that travels 500 years into the time of Jesus. And Jesus is taking that same fundamental message to his disciples. He's inviting them to become the salt of the earth. He recognizes that salt, particularly in the ancient Near East, is overwhelmingly valuable. It's life-giving, it's life-affirming. That the disciples of Jesus are to become that salt. They're to become that light. They're to share the hope that God has for each and every person, and to celebrate the sacredness of life. And it's that spirit, that love, that hope, that shalom, that peace that I experienced listening in the narthex on Friday night. And it's that same love and that same peace and that same shalom that is experienced right here at TLC in a variety of different ways. Each one of you have been called into ministry. Each one of you are responding in the way that God would ask you to respond. Each one of you is light and salt. And each one of you needs to also remember that sometimes you need that light and salt. That we give and we receive love. It is how this thing works. We can't do it alone, see. We can't do it alone. And as we allow ourselves to be loved and filled with that Spirit, we do become salt and we do become light. Amen.